Casualties of war, the result of a generational curse or the influence of a third force. Many millions of people died in the Second World War. It turns out that all families were affected. Can these effects be passed on through the bloodline? Yes, they can be passed on through the bloodline. The whole thing is that wars begin when these, shall we say, sins, unforgivable mistakes, various seals, accumulate to such an extent that they exceed all conceivable limits, and in order to cleanse itself, it is necessary to sacrifice someone. The bloodline sacrifices one of its members to cleanse itself of all sin. In this case it was a clash between different systems. They were confronted with each other, each with their own gods behind them. In fact, the Second World War was not a war between men, but between gods. But the war of the gods took place on this territory, not somewhere in Africa. Because it was these people who were so wretched, so stained with the seals of oath-breaking, that if anyone was to be chosen for sacrifice, it was they. I wrote about this in my book, The Power of the Bloodline. A very large number of people have betrayed those to whom they swore allegiance. At the beginning of the 20th century, a series of social revolutions swept across Europe. They were accompanied by the overthrow and murder of royal family members, and the overthrow and murder of church representatives. Meaning they destroyed clerics, priests, sacred servants. And that is an unforgivable sin, a curse that falls on all members of the bloodline, with an indelible seal, for 7 or even 40 generations. It is impossible to get rid of it. The only thing that can wash away the seal of a broken oath is blood, so someone must be sacrificed. And the sacrifice has been made. They betrayed their rulers in Europe, overthrew all their kings and emperors in the Austrian Empire and killed them all in our country. Whether they were good or bad, it didn't matter. A king, an emperor, a czar is anointed by God. It is a person whose consciousness is able to hold a channel between the God and the world. Do you understand what an anointed one is? It is believed that he is the one through whom God expresses his will. And to kill the bearer of such a channel is to deprive a God of his power. Accordingly, the forces that led both Russia and Europe came into conflict. They began to fight each other over who owned what territory. This conflict was, of course, caused by the third force, the one that unleashed the wave of social revolutions. The people who created the occult state knew all these rules perfectly, because the occult is what the United States of America was founded on. They knew these rules as well as they knew the Our Father. They prepared these social revolutions. They did an enormous amount of serious work. Many generations of members of Masonic organizations have been preparing social revolutions all over Europe because they needed this war. They needed this war and blood was shed. And now they need essentially the same thing, because they will only live according to the agreement between them and their gods if they make serious blood sacrifices. The war will unfold. It is already underway, because it is only during war that certain forces gain new rights.